So, and if that's the case, then, I think it'll be awesome. And so I'll just go through it and I will cut the audio out of this, what we're going to do now. Um, and we'll just kind of go with it, and I'll put it into TFR later. So there. So it's just you and me, and we're just going to talk about mindfulness, and then I'll put it wherever it needs to be. It is going live in theory onto YouTube, and we'll just work it out from there.
Theory.
So yeah, trying to
All right.
wow with it, work with it. See, just like 2020, we have to work with it. In the meantime, I have wine.
There you go. Good man bringing you some wine.
Oh, we got to get some of that Fuji apple.
Yeah, right.
Mm. Do you guys do sake?
Yeah, we went to Syringa's for dinner just a couple weeks ago after a sound bath by a Dreamtime Sound Healing.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Go check them out if you have not done so. It's a great experience. Internal vacation all the way. And then our friend that is part of the Dreamtime Sound Healing, she suggested going to Syringa and trying the
Fuji apple.
Fuji apple sake.
Mm.
Oh, it's like candy. It's delicious.
Oh, there's is it in a blue bottle?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
No, that
my
one.
stars. So the Fuji apple is awesome. If you have a chance to try the raspberry, it tastes just like you've taken a spoonful of raspberry jam and stuck it in your mouth. It
Oh,
is
yum.
yum, but it'll put
Dangerous.
it'll yeah, dangerous. It'll park you in your seat because the moment you stand up, you're like, well, where did that come from? Because it tastes so good. So
Here's a gravity check real quick.
yeah. So mindfulness. We're going to start over just a little bit. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Good.
This is Judge and Cyndal from Blooming Lotus Hypnosis, and tonight we're talking about mindfulness because it's very, very important this year. Well, it's important in general, but this year it seems like we need all the help we can get. So I know we started earlier and we talked about what is mindfulness, but if you guys could just kind of go over that one more time, thank you.
Mindfulness is being in a present state of mind in the moment. It means that you're not allowing the thoughts of the past or thoughts of what if or in the future to be um, kind of convoluting the moment that you're in. When you're not thinking about these kinds of things, you can be more focused and centered on what you are doing and do a better job, enjoy yourself better, and also be a lot clearer when you're making your decisions. Um, with all that other stress from the past or thinking or worrying about the future, your
Mm.
stress levels go down, your anxiety goes away. um,
That'd be
so
good.
there's a lot of benefits that happen there. Yeah.
Yeah, that anxiety is that's a big one. I see so many people with anxiety issues. So I work, I mentioned earlier, I work in an esoteric shop, which is pretty freaking awesome. We have so many people coming in looking for something to help with anxiety, with stress, cleansing themselves, and just trying to figure out what on earth it is that they are going to do to survive for the next period of time. Just we don't know when this is going to end, unfortunately. It
Well,
seems
60% of our clients are coming to us about anxiety. So it's something that we see on a daily basis. And with everything that's going on in the world and all the distractions that our society is growing up with, you know, we're we're stuck on these things all the time, and people are, watching news and other things that are filling our heads full of all kinds of nonsense and social media and you name it.
mm-hmm.
Everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. How can you be mindful in the present with all that going on? And it's a major distraction. And especially the younger generations now, they really have no idea what it's like to have a moment of peace without that static, the background noise, all of this other stuff going on. And gosh, I think back when I was a kid, didn't have all of these neat toys and all of this stuff. I was outside, playing
You're
with.
just jealous.
I
Just
know,
kidding.
I know. I said, hey, climb a tree, play with some bricks, build a fort. That was about all I had. So that was a very different kind of a thing, but easier to have less distractions in your life to be
Yes.
focused on what you want to do.
Yeah, as a kid, I remember at one point my dad got this pickup or this semi truck load of cedar planks. They were like 1x4 planks, and they just dumped them off. He says, "You guys can do whatever you want with these. I'd really like it if you stacked them up nice and neat, though." And it's like, "Are you sure, nice and neat, Dad?" Yeah. So we made basically log cabins. We just alternated stacking them up. 8 feet tall. You climb up the outside, you go in the top, and you hang out in there. And it was peaceful. It was our little retreats. But we just went out. We basically had ginormous, Lincoln logs to play with, and just to do whatever we wanted to. And often we had a couple stories, we had benches, and we had seats, and we had a roof, and we did all this stuff. And I just don't see kids doing that kind of randomness anymore, which is frustrating because they should. And
Yeah.
like my daughter, she likes to watch YouTube videos, which is okay, but a lot of those YouTube videos are of other people playing, and it's not even real play. It's staged play, so it's fake playtime. And on the one hand, it's like, okay, she's learned some things. She's learned some interactive and how to, how to pretend a little bit more in a different way. But it's like, turn your tablet off, go outside, go play, chase the dog. I don't care. Go experience the world. And I don't think our kids are experiencing the world enough.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
I think that there's definitely a lot to that. I think too, with how much the world has changed, that a lot of parents are kind of afraid to even let their kids outside. And then these kids have all these video games and their cell phones and their tablets, and they have all of their friends online. So then why would you even want to go outside when you can just do it from the AC home, right?
Right.
But that does bring up a mindfulness tip, though,
Mm-hmm.
is going outside and being present in nature. So whenever I go outside and I take my dog for a walk or a hike, I don't have any music. I have nothing going. Sometimes I will just take my phone and put on Do Not Disturb. I still have my phone with me just in case if I need it. But I put it on Do Not Disturb so then my notifications aren't going off. Or if I'm getting a phone call, it's not going to disturb me. And as I'm walking through nature, I pay attention to every little thing. I pay attention to how the ground feels as I'm walking. What are all the different smells I can pick up, and all the different sounds I can hear, and just noticing small little changes and just being completely present in the moment. And then finding a place that is going to be away from other people, and just finding a place just to sit down and just be with your breath and be with your thoughts. So that is a really great way of bringing more mindfulness into your life. And you really don't need a lot of it. It's been proven, I believe it's about 15-20 minutes a day helps activate and reduces gray matter in the brain, and helps activate and light up the prefrontal cortex. And all mindfulness practices do. And the prefrontal cortex is really associated to like problem solving, decision making, and even how we respond and react in social situations. So it's a very important part of our brain. And so just any kind of mindfulness that we can bring into our life, it's really helping increase our brain activity, and how well our brain functions. And then it's also going to bring more peace into our lives.
Yeah, and we need more of that peace. We need to find it. 15, 20
Definitely.
minutes is not that much time.
Nope.
Honestly, it really, really isn't.
And what's cool though too about, even if you dedicate, I'm going to go outside for 15 minutes 5 times a week, so not even every day, because sometimes things come up, but I'm going to dedicate 15 minutes 5 times a week. What normally happens is that people will actually stay out there longer than 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
They usually stay out there as long as they can once they actually get out there. It's just like what my yoga instructor says, that sometimes the hardest part about yoga is just showing up and getting on the mat. And so once you just get out there outside, the rest is pretty easy. Just about scheduling that time for yourself, because your mental health is worth it.
It is. It very much is. So, for right now, um, the I live in a house that was built in the early '70s, back when a lot of rules and restrictions weren't exactly enforced here in North Idaho, and so our septic system is grandfathered in, meaning it's not to code, but it was here before codes were really starting to be enforced. So, hey, deal with it. Well, the downside of that is trees grow, roots happen, and our drain field has become compromised. So our septic system isn't working right now. So we have a porta potty outside. We have gray water can go in, so we can wash, small loads of laundry. We can do dishes and take, fast showers, that kind of thing. But anything else, you got to go outside to the porta potty that's in the front yard. And so the dog wants to come out every time I open the dang door. So I am outside repeatedly throughout the day for, X amount of time just because I have to. But once you get out there, yeah, who wants to go back inside? It's been a beautiful fall here in North Idaho, at least. And I wouldn't. I know other areas of the world are having some rough weather right now. I'm sorry. North Idaho's better. Just saying. But but we're full. There's no room. And so, but it just looking at the moon is I had more time with the moon this last full moon cycle, just because I was outside every time you go open the door. Oh, hey, look, it's the full moon. Oh, bask in the presence, and just that grounding of it has been really, really good for me. So yeah, I'm not telling everybody to go get a porta potty because you don't want to. Trust me.
You'll go outside more.
Right? But if the dog
Maybe
has to
they'll
go
catch a
outside,
glimpse of the northern lights.
exactly, exactly. I was gonna say, if you have to, wake up in the middle of the night to let the dog out, don't just shut the door. Go out there with the dog.
Nope, and that's what I do. I'll go out there as long as there's no snow. I won't do
Right?
that barefoot. But yeah, I'll go outside, and that is even like another really good mindfulness technique is going. It's grounding and mindfulness. They are very closely related. I would actually say they're probably interweaved with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Is going outside and really digging your feet into the ground. Judge and I were talking about this the other day. Like he kind of like crunches his toes. So that's how he grounds. And then me, I spread my feet out as far as I can and really get down in there in the grass. And another really good way is hugging a tree and just being there present with the tree and sending the tree like your love energy. And that's such a great way to ground and get and be with the breath and just have that connection and just being present.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, feel the wind and the air movement on your skin, the sunlight or moonlight on your skin, the texture, the bark, any of that, and just the physical presence of it. I think it's awesome, and yes, do it. It's important. By golly, and it is. Go hug a tree. I'm not as an environmentalist, just go hug a tree. So, um, so how can mindfulness help just in our day-to-day lives besides grounding and getting some of that negativity? No, I know I'm not on TFR. I killed TFR. Oh, I'll come back to TFR later. So yes, how can we do more mindfulness in our day-to-day lives? Or how will it help?
Well, I mean, mindfulness isn't something that's just going to happen automatically. It takes effort because, like anything else, it's a habit that you develop
Mm-hmm.
and that you create. So there are many different ways to practice mindfulness and to begin to develop it, through meditation, self-hypnosis, just like little practices that you can do of recognizing what's going on in your life. How does it help? The better question is how doesn't it help? There is literally no category in everyday life where mindfulness isn't useful and helps enhance and improve the situation that you're living in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's going to help greatly reduce your stress. It's going to change your perspective. If it's going to reduce or even eliminate all anxiety, people who suffer with PTSD goes right on down. The way that you feel, your health, your mental health, your physical health, even your spiritual health. There are so many things that it helps you put into perspective, because when we're in the moment and we are thinking more clearly, we make better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And when we make better decisions, well, everything's better.
Right. Yeah. The instinctive, or the instead of being reactive or reactionary. Ah, no, get out of my water bottle. Um, we're able to be, just more, instead of yanking the water bottle from the cat and spilling the wine. Um, yeah, being reactive means we don't stop and think about, what the potential ramifications are and what could happen as a side effect of whatever we're choosing to do. Like taking the water bottle away from the cat. I spilled my wine. I'm sad now. I spilled a little bit of wine. But, it's, the unintended consequences of being reactive to a situation is it's very hard to plan it out. It kind of like driving on ice. You can't be too reactive driving on ice, or else you're going to go in the ditch anyway. So it's just yeah.
The more that you practice this when you are not driving on ice,
Mm-hmm.
and the more that you practice mindfulness when you are in a good state of mind,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to remember to use those techniques when you
Yeah,
need them.
exactly.
Um, so, like when clients come to us and I teach them a couple different breathing exercises, I give them the homework to practice it at least once an hour, and when they're feeling good, because in that moment when because in that moment when they're going to need that breathing exercise,
Mm-hmm.
they're probably going to remember it because it's something that they've been practicing for almost, like 12 times
Mm-hmm.
for a week,
Exactly.
12 times a day for a week.
It becomes like a muscle memory. No, don't do that.
Exactly. And a lot of the times when we are experiencing anxiety, we tend to hold our breath. And that goes back to our previous conversation, is that we are not taught these tools. We're not taught how to properly breathe.
Mm-hmm.
We're not taught how to be mindful. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really no one's fault. Our parents, they didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just now where mental health is becoming more of a crucial topic to talk about. And yeah, now is better than ever.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. And it becomes like a muscle memory, the more often you do something. That's why like mini me's in jiu-jitsu, and they do drills of different things. They call them, like, for instance, shrimps. It's you're laying on your side and you're pushing off with one foot, and you roll over, you do it the other side, and you go back and forth down the room. But it's because once you get the muscle memory, that's how you should respond in certain situations. It becomes instinctual,
Yep.
because and
Martial arts is a great example. You know, I started martial arts when I was 5 years old, and that's the whole principle of it is, creating that muscle memory so that you react without thinking.
mm-hmm,
And teaching mindfulness and in martial arts when you begin your meditation process. And that meditation is what brings a person present in their focus. And when they're focusing, they can utilize their energies to a sharper
mm-hmm,
point. And
yes,
that's how they accomplish a great deal many things in the martial arts.
mm-hmm, yeah,
And that's where I started meditation.
yeah, exactly, and yeah, and you get into it, and it becomes instead of the instinctive reactionary, the instinctive behavior then is so much more. It's more controlled. It's stronger. A reactionary energy is weaker than a planned energy. Because a planned energy, you're shoring up the potential. You know this is going to happen. You're getting ready for it. You know it's going to be, and so you've already got those automatic processes in place. So you've already got that energy. So honestly, the mindfulness, doing that meditation and being, repetitive and getting in your head, in your practice, and it becomes habit. it's less exhausting than being anxious over something on and on and on and on again. So,
Definitely. I completely agree.
When you understand something and you know what it is, then you know what to do with it.
yes,
You know,
it
if you've
takes.
never seen an engine before and somebody shows it to you, how are you going to know how to fix it? That's just basically the principle of the idea. When I teach my clients this kind of a thing, you know, the reason why we fail is because we are distracting ourselves. We are doing things from a reactionary point of view, and because we're not identifying why we're doing it,
Hmm.
and that's why we don't know what we're doing or what it is. So when we're feeling a thing and somebody gets angry, they go punch a hole in a wall or scream at somebody or go start drinking some alcohol, but it's not fixing the reason why they were angry or even addressing the reason why they were angry and what they should be doing about it to create a satisfying response.
Yeah.
But when a person's more mindful, they can stop themselves for a second because they're not reacting and they're like, wait a minute, what am I feeling? What's happening right now? What caused this? Okay, and how do I fix this?
Hmm.
Well, what's the best way to react instead of escalating it or making things worse?
They go
Hmm.
from a state of being reaction to a thoughtful response. And that's exactly what my mindfulness helps us do.
Hmm.
Move out of the reaction state of old programming, unconscious programming, to moving to an intentional, thoughtful response.
Yes, and that thoughtful response is so much better for us. It really is. It's just better for us. Um, we've talked about meditation just a little bit. You mentioned it. So what's the difference between meditation and waking mindfulness?
Well, meditation is you're taking the time to practice mindfulness
Hmm.
in an atmosphere with a state of mind and utilizing a technique in order to progress your skill. The more you practice something, the better you get. And that's just human nature.
Hmm.
And so that's what meditation is you are practicing your mindfulness and increasing your ability. Waking meditation, waking mindfulness is just like, every day, you're at work or you're doing whatever you are, and you become aware of your present moment. And by being aware of that present moment, you're intentionally not distracting yourselves with things that are not in the moment.
Okay.
Yes. So, some really good examples and different ways that people can start integrating more mindfulness into their life besides just sitting there and meditating.
Hmm.
Meditating has a lot of different benefits, but sometimes some people really struggle with sitting there and meditating. So
Yes.
even it could be as simple as carving out some time and giving your and there's nothing wrong with that. And so, I mean, I am a mindfulness coach, so I teach people how to do meditation, and I work with people that have the label ADD and ADHD. And so with those type of individuals, I give them different kind of homework, even if it's just mindfully coloring, mindfully eating. So there's so many different ways on how we can integrate this into our life. So even if just sitting about 15, 20 minutes, very first thing in the morning, and just giving yourself the time to do no thing, just doing nothing, right? Just doing no thing and just sitting there with your breathing and being an observer of your thoughts. So allowing yourself to think those thoughts. But when you are an observer, you're not judging them. You're not clinging on to them. You're not following down the rabbit hole. You are just allowing them just to be. Then you allow them to move on. Another a really easy one to integrate into our lives is eating mindfully. And so, how I eat mindfully is that every time I take a bite, I put my fork down or my spoon down. So in that way, I'm not just shoveling food in my face. Um, also, too, not drinking a lot of water or a lot of liquid while
Hmm.
you're eating, because we have this tendency that when we're eating that we take big bites and then we just like gulp it down with all of these liquids. And so really cutting back on the liquids while we're eating, and that's actually going to help the food digest better because of the saliva already does all of that for us. And so some examples of mindful eating, I want to share something from this book that I recently got. It's How to Be Happy or at least a Little Less Sad by Lee Crutchley. And so it's a workbook and it has some really, really fun stuff in here. And I got this book just the other day. And there's one that really caught my attention. It's called A Chocolate Meditation, Eating Mindfully.
Chocolate.
So if anyone has some chocolate, I
Chocolate
would suggest you get it now.
I
So
like it.
sit comfortably away from distractions. Take a piece of chocolate in your hands and really just look at it. Feel its weight and its texture. Look at its colors or colors. Notice how you're dying to shove it into your mouth. Don't. Smell it instead. Did you know that it smelled like that? Okay, put it into your mouth slowly now. Let it sit on your tongue. Does the flavor change as it melts? Are there more flavors than you thought? Hold it in your mouth as long as you can. Does this feel weird? Okay, you can eat it. So this is a really great way of a good example of what mindful eating is.
Mhm.
And so if you can do this with every meal, but do this with your first 3 bites, so you don't have to do it the entire meal because sometimes, you know, we have stuff to go to, but we don't have a full hour to eat
Right.
a salad.
Mhm.
But doing this with the first 3 bites of your meal and really sitting there with all the different textures and the flavors, and also too just having gratitude for the
Yes.
food that you're eating.
Turn off the TV, put the cell phones away, don't have the music blaring.
No books either. No books while you're eating.
And you know, it might actually be a good opportunity to have a meaningful conversation with people in your own home.
That's after the first 3 bites, though.
After the first 3 bites. Yep.
After the first
True,
3 bites.
true.
So, like in our house, the dining room table does not have line of sight to the TV, and I prefer that. I don't really like sitting in the living room watching TV and eating at the same time. It's not handy, and I'm prone to spilling anyways because I'm I am my mother's daughter. I have that talent, and and you know, I would just as soon sit at the table. And yeah, putting away the technology, put the phone down, put the tablet down. Sometimes we'll have, you know, like music playing in the background, but it's not the news. I canceled the news because that's not mindful. And you know, it's really weird the different things that people assume we have to have at a mealtime or when we're doing different things. You know, we assume we have to have all this noise all the time. I love it when the power goes out, to be honest. It's so quiet and peaceful.
Right? Yeah,
Um,
when I'm home by myself, I have completely quiet, and it's just the only other sounds I can really hear is sounds of the animals that they
mhm.
make. We have a couple rats and we have our dog, and so they go around and they'll make a little bit of noise. You know, and I think it's a great thing to not eating while watching TV, because what you're doing is that you're literally programming your mind that when you sit in this place and you're watching the TV, that you're creating an anchor for food. So even if you're not actually hungry, but because you've done it so much, that's what your brain is associated with. We
Mhm.
sit here, we watch this flat screen with images on it and sounds, and we get hungry even though we're really not hungry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And we eat even if we don't really need to. And it's frustrating because like with mini me, you know, if I let her eat, you know, sit the coffee table is a little lower, so sometimes it's more comfortable for her. So she starts assuming that that's where she's going to eat her meals all the time, and sometimes that's not where she needs to be, that she needs to sit at the big table, she needs to talk to us, she needs to interact with us. If for no other reason, conversation's good for you. Um,
Yeah.
it does air things that needs to be said. It's a way to communicate, hey, how was your day? On that note, if someone says, hey, how was your day today? Don't say, oh, it's just like it always is. Let's stop and think about it. Use the mindfulness technique. Stop and think about it. How was my day today? What happened?
My how what I do in regards to that, I ask people like, how are you feeling today?
Mm-hmm.
Julie, do the thing.
So by asking people, how are you feeling today, that is different than how are you doing? Because then people have to like, oh, they have to think about their feeling, and just even adding that one little extra word can even change the entire dialogue of how the conversation can unfold.
Mm-hmm. And it's little things. It's little bits and pieces. It's not. It shouldn't be traumatic. It shouldn't be a big deal. It's little baby steps.
Exactly.
Yep, and that's a great way to start. I mean, with all these things, it seems like, oh, well, if I got to do all of this, then I'm not going to go ahead and do it. But you make one little change.
Mm-hmm.
You want to say, gosh, what can I do to lose weight? Well, try stop drinking soda. That's it. See what happens.
Well, if you're
In this particular case, well, let's cut out something.
mm-hmm.
Try a 30-day challenge of not watching TV and see how that changes your life. Because that time that you've spent watching TV, or 30 days of no social media, or 30 days of not using my cell phone, these kinds of things, you begin to notice
mm-hmm.
that there are changes. There's more time for you to focus on things that are more meaningful, more important, more real.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you can notice those things. And that's a probably good place to start, is just pick something, just one thing, and try to change it.
That more meaningful, I think, is a big deal, especially with the social media and the phones, because we're so connected these days. Everybody has a cell phone. It seems like about a third to half of people have the smart watches now, where they're connected, even though their phone might be in the car or at home. Their watch tells them everything that. And everybody's checking into this platform or that platform. I know that because of the show, I've got so many different social media platforms that I kind of touch base into every so often, but my brain hurts, so I can't do that many. So I'm not very good at it. But they're there, and those connections, while real with those people, is not the same as having a tangible connection face to face. And I think that's why there is such a problem with depression, for instance, in a lot of our younger peoples, because they don't know how to have that physical interaction face to face without the crutch of social media.
Yeah. A couple years ago, when I very first met Judge, I was really challenging myself, where every month I was doing a new 30-day challenge. And so I would do like 30 days of like no makeup, and 30 days with no sugar, 30 days of no meat, so on and so forth. And I did 30 days of no social media. And what I really discovered about that is, when I was out in public, I would pull up my phone and I would try to go to Facebook, because I was trying to escape the present moment, because I was so anxious about these people standing in line with me, these strangers that I don't know. So it's really just an escape. But really, all you would really need to do, I mean, sometimes this is easier said than done from some people, is bring yourself back to the present moment. And a really good mindfulness technique and grounding technique, and it's a pretty popular, common one, is that if you're like standing in line somewhere and you're starting to feel anxious and you have all these thoughts starting to roll through your mind, you look around. What are 5 things that I could see? What are 4 things I can touch? What are 3 things I can hear? What are 2 things I can smell? And what's 1 thing I can taste? So it's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. Okay. And what this does, this helps get us out of our mind and into the present moment with our senses. And when we get out of the mind, and into the present moment, it's much easier for us to be present, because all anxiety really is the want or the need to escape the present moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so mindfulness, bring it back to mindfulness. It's that's a really easy technique that you can use anywhere that's going to help bring you back to the present moment. Um, Another really good one is focusing on one task at a time, what Judge was almost pretty much saying. A really good one is like doing the dishes. I know no one really wants to be doing the dishes, but this could really change the relationship with the dishes. Being grateful for running water, being grateful for soap, and feeling the clean water on your hands, and as you're washing, and like seeing what you can smell and what you can hear as you're cleaning your dishes. So that's another really good way of just
Mm-hmm.
adding a little extra mindfulness into your life, and it's something that most of us kind of have to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Like when I'm upset about something, I will often go find vegetables to chop because it's hard to chop vegetables when you're angry because you have to focus on it so you don't cut your fingertips off. It, exactly. So it's
Ow!
the conscious behavior. Exactly, Judge. He's got it. It's the conscious thing, to refocus that energy somewhere else is going to be a lot more productive because, anger can do things for you. You can use it as a force for good, or it can be a force for not good. And if I'm not gonna express it in a good way, what are the other things I can do with that energy? And for me, chopping vegetables is or doing dishes. I do that actually, or clean. It's um, nothing you can tell if I look in my craft area right now. But sometimes I craft, whatever it is. But if I'm making something for someone else, I don't want to have that anger, so I have to find it somewhere else, or do something else with it because I don't want to craft like a dream catcher, for instance, angry because
Yeah,
that puts the wrong secondary emotion into the dream catcher. That's not really what you want.
you give them this dream catcher, they hang it up, looks all gorgeous, and every night they're having very traumatic nightmares night after night after night. For some reason, I keep having this dream where I want to beat my husband up, or like,
I'm an angry driver every night. I don't know what's wrong with me. Yeah, so, in that respect, I've noticed when my emotions are at an extreme, whether it's anger or anxiety, especially anxiety, and I'm cooking, often my anxiety blocks the intuitive nature of my cooking, and whatever it is I'm preparing doesn't have the same success rate as it does when I don't have that anxiety.
yeah,
And so,
yeah,
and it's just something I've noticed. And I've journaled it because journaling is important. Everybody, journal, journal, journal. I say it every day, so I have to do it, at least once in the show. But you write it down, and you know that it's there. It's a tangible thing. It's like, hey, I did this thing, and I had this result, and it becomes habitual, and you can see the results of being that have that mindful behavior when in your day to day life. So,
yeah.
um, on my list, we kind of talked about here. How is I am pagan. I consider myself an intuitive witch. How would mindfulness affect my practice more, or my rituals, or my spiritual side, if you will?
It would crank it up.
Drop the
Definitely
beat.
turn up the energy.
You know,
Because one of the biggest things with doing magic or doing any kind of spell casting is having focus. And being mindful is going to increase your focus. And so, but then also, too, if you're being more mindful within your spiritual practice, that
mm-hmm,
means that the intention is probably even it's going to be more real,
mm-hmm,
and it's going to be more authentic with your practice and what you're wanting to manifest into the physical.
gotcha.
Yep, it's the law of attraction. If you're not clear, you may not like what you end up with.
Yes. Sometimes when I think about it or I'm talking about it with somebody else, like the fiction talks about rituals to summon demons or spirits from the other world or whatever it is, because I read a lot of fiction and it's a form of escape, and I know this, but anyways, it's fun. But they talk about how you have to have, this in place, and you have to have that ritual, and you have to say these words, and you have to define everything. And in reality, we don't really do that. But sometimes setting that intent and going through those steps helps us be mindful of what we're trying to accomplish. Not just having that clear thought or that clear intention. Otherwise, sure, if you throw enough mud at the wall, something's going to stick. But is it really the thing that you wanted to stick? I mean, is that the right mud? So.
Well, whether it's prayer or magical practice, when you try to manifest something, your intention can't have a lot of gray lines in between it. And the more clear that you are in using mindfulness, that way you're not being distracted by the past and you're not thinking of the what ifs. So this way you can just be focused on what it is that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And that's big. That is very big. I've talked to people who have had rituals or spells that just don't seem to work. They don't have the results. It's like, well, I say, did you journal what you're trying to do? Did you journal the steps that you did? Did you journal your results? What happened? Did you expect to happen, and how was it different? Well, often it's because their intention wasn't clear at the very beginning. They had some subconscious thought. They didn't do the proper meditation before entering a ritual or doing the spell. And so, yeah, they're gray-minded, going into it. So the results were gray. And
Yeah. And I also think, too, definitely with doing any kind of magic, I had a client ask me about the power of attraction, and that, if we say that we want something bad enough, that it's just going to just manifest. And I think that there's a couple different things that feed into that. Definitely being mindful. But also, too, the universe does not respond to what we want or what we do. It responds to how we feel.
mm-hmm.
And so if we don't have everything in here, so within, so without. So if we don't have everything in here in alignment with our intention, then it's also going to be much more difficult to manifest what you're wanting to bring in.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, too, in my opinion, taking action towards your goals is also another big step. But then again, bringing it back to mindfulness and meditations is going to be able to help with everything going on in here, getting you more in alignment with your goals and what you are wanting to bring into the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
You're sitting there, I want that blue car. No, maybe red. Well, maybe, no, I'd rather have it black. Sports car or sedan? 4-door, 2-door?
Subaru.
So yeah, that's not the time while you're casting the spell to be going over that.
Exactly. And you have to do the work also. It's not, you set your intention, you cast the spell, you do that part, but you still have to do your homework or the bits of it. You can never win the lottery if you don't actually buy the lottery ticket. I mean, just as a black and white example.
Unless you find a random lottery ticket on the ground, you're so happy to pick it up, and it just so happens to be the one that's
Right.
like the jackpot. But
it had to be purchased somewhere. So it's you can't win if you don't set up some sort of situation where you could win.
Yeah.
Like you go to the horse races. You're not going to win on a race if you don't bet on a horse, or
Sure.
You're not going to get a job probably if you don't apply for jobs.
That would make sense too, right?
Or have interviews or whatever it is. You're not going to have gas in your car if you don't go to the gas station and put gas in your car. I mean, you have to do your own work.
Yep.
I've mentioned on the show before a couple times where, the parable of the man in the southeast, and there's a hurricane coming, and everybody says, "Oh, evacuate, evacuate." He's like, "No, God will take care of me." And they're like, "Okay, well, do you, man." And over the progression of the storm, there, there's, everybody says to evacuate, then the law enforcement says to evacuate, and then the house floods, and someone says, "Hey, I've got a canoe, let's go." And he's like, "No, God's going to take care of me." Or some higher power, and God was in the parable, but a higher power is going to take care of him. Anyways, it keeps going, and the ultimately he dies from drowning, and he goes to his afterlife, and he's like, "Why didn't you take care of me?" He's like, and the person, there at the crossover is like, "Well, you had this opportunity, this opportunity, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. You never took any of the
We also
opportunities
give you a
that I
canoe.
presented you." There was a canoe, there was a boat, there's a yacht. To why all you had to do is do your own work. Yes, fantastic things happen because you put your intentions out there. You do that part, but very, very rarely does the big bag of money just land in your lap because it fell out of the sky.
Yeah.
Or the big house or the fancy car, or whatever it is you're trying to do. You have to do your part. You have to commit to doing that part of it.
Yeah. And I think that a big part of that, like what I was saying, is doing the internal work and feeling your feelings. And that's even another mindfulness technique, is like sitting with sitting with your feelings and being okay with the feelings that arise, because all feelings are good as long as we can understand what they're trying to tell us. And when we're using mindfulness to feel our feelings, it's not about judging them or trying to cling on to them. It's just about really putting yourself in the observing seat, and just knowing that, we're human, and this is part of the human experience, is having these feelings.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it too. No matter what your intentions are, some of it are programmed reactions, are programmed feelings regarding a certain situation, are going to color the results. And if you're, like, for instance, I grew up ultra Christian, no my water, and so there are some responses that, even though I've done a lot of personal work, are still very much rooted in that, the way I grew up. And it's interesting sometimes how it's like, no, I'm going to go into the situation. I tell myself beforehand, it's like, this is the way I'm going to handle it. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to have this kind of a result, and that's good. But even then, sometimes, your programming fails, and you go into it, and you fall back into that old rut because that behavior pattern is so comfortable and normal. It's frustrating, but yeah, you got to be mindful of it.
And it takes practice. And I think one of the biggest things, and a lot of my clients will beat themselves up, and it's so common for us to focus on the negative. Actually, our brain normally will process negative information faster than it does process positive information. And that goes into how we were wired and how we survived back in the day. It's called negativity bias thinking. And without this negativity bias thinking, we would have probably have not got this far as a species. And so the example that I share about this is that when we are, like, back in the hunting and gathering type days, this person is going out and he's looking for food. And then he notices out of nowhere that he's being chased by a mountain lion. So then he's running for his life so he doesn't end up being food. Then as he's running, he sees this apple hanging from a tree. So he has two options. He can keep running, or he can stop and grab the apple and then become lunch for the mountain lion. And so because of that, we have been conditioned that to focus on the negative because it's going to save our life. And now, for most people nowadays, we aren't being chased by mountain lions, and we don't, we're not always in constant danger, but that negativity bias thinking is still hardwired within us. And so it's about realizing that this is how we're wired, but we don't have to be that way. And it takes practice, mindfulness practices, to rewire our mind. It's called neuroplasticity. We can look at our brains as if it's plastic, where we can literally rewire our brain and we can slowly begin to reshape these certain things that we want to change in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But it does, it does take repetition and it does take practice. And even when we make a mistake, where like, I'm going to go into the situation and this is how it's going to go, da, 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 and then we go into it and it goes completely sideways. Most people beat themselves up instead of taking it as a learning experience. Be like, okay, well, I learned not to do that again. And then hopefully you do it a little bit better the next time and then the next time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's the difference between a valuable lesson and an expensive lesson.
Right? Do
So,
that.
often, stress and anxiety will stop that logical thinking, and we do fall back into those patterns. So, how do we keep track of our mindfulness even when we're stressed or dealing with a lot of anxiety?
I think one of the biggest things, again, is making sure that we are doing these practices when we're feeling good. So then when we are starting to feel not good, that we will remember to do it, kind of like the muscle memory. So I think that's a really, really big deal. And then I had another one, but I forgot. I'll go ahead and let you carry on.
Oh,
I have to think. I forgot one.
well, it's just like whenever you want to change any kind of habit, you have to pick out something that you're going to recognize. So every time that you do it, you can go, okay, I'm doing it again. I said it that way again. I did it that way again. As you're doing it, and then once you start to become aware of when you're doing something, then you can begin to start changing it. So that's just it. You just pick the one thing and you just begin. And then you start to make those changes.
So, on those changes that you make, that you start with the baby steps, that one thing that you want, it's like, I want to achieve, see, weight loss, you mentioned that earlier. Hey, I want to lose 100 pounds. Okay, cool. And how are you going to do that? We have to reverse engineer it to logical and acceptable short-term goals. 100 pounds in a year, sure, okay, that's acceptable. You're pushing it a little bit, but okay, it could happen. But what are you going to do in the meantime? Okay, well, I'm going to, for instance, maybe park as far from the grocery store door as I can and walk it instead of as close to the door. That's a little thing, but it's a big deal, And
all those steps, they add up.
they do. But you have to remember, for some of those mindfulness goals, you do have to reverse engineer your big goal first to make sure that bite size or that first step is logical in your end result. And helps push you towards that end result that you're trying to achieve. Because, a lot of us have some really big goals and really big things that we want to do. Like, I want to write a book. Okay, well, I've got the big book I've been working on, but in the meantime, I've started on a couple kids' books because it made more logical sense to do the kids' books. So, it's, the baby steps. Literally, in this case, it's just little baby steps. So, but, what do? It's the reverse engineering of the different steps or the different small bite-size achievable goals is big. How long do we do one of those little goals, and how long does it take to become a habit and muscle memory?
Usually it takes about 20 to 30 days to form a habit. About 21 days, I believe. Now, something that some of my clients say when we're like working on anxiety, and it feels like that they're about to climb like Mount Everest and they're going to climb like this biggest mountain that they've ever seen. I ask them, what do you do when you're climbing a mountain? While you're walking up the mountain, are you looking at the top as you're walking? No. You're paying attention to the very next smallest step. So then that way you don't step on a pine cone and fall down and twist your ankle, or you don't step in a pothole. You are focusing on the next smallest step. So depending on what your small step is, once that starts to become more comfortable, and then once it starts kind of just being just part of your daily life, that's like, okay, this is when it's time to start integrating something else.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be starting off small, just going outside for 15 minutes and just doing some breathing. And then you do that for like a week, like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good. Then starting to integrate doing the dishes and mindful eating. And so you can start bringing in all these different things. Or even when you're going to cast a spell or do some magic, doing some deep intentional breaths, making sure you're doing your journaling, and, and that you're getting all your ducks in a row before you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always, and really growth too is at the edge of our comfort level. And
Yes.
so when we start getting comfortable, that's when we kind of want to start to even expand it even a little bit further. And that's how we continue to grow as humans, is to continue to expand our comfort zone.
Okay. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to step outside the comfort zone.
It
Very,
is.
very hard.
I
But
like my comfort zone. I have a rising Taurus, so I'm all about like comfort and things, but it is important to
A complete Taurus.
it's important to expand that though, and so then we don't become stagnant and complacent. And even when we do become stagnant and complacent, at that point, that's when we can start developing other feelings that don't feel good, like such as boredom.
mm-hmm.
And then maybe we even start feeling frustration because nothing is changing and everything is always the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we start to feel frustrated in life, that means that we need to start doing something different because it's not working.
Right.
And sometimes doing something different can be scary, um,
Yes.
but that usually means you're on to something, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It is quite often hard to embrace the scary because well, it's different and it's scary, and we're not really taught as a society to really embrace those things that we find fearful. It's in a way, it almost feels like we're given an excuse or a pass. Like, oh, you're afraid of that? Oh, it's okay. He'll be fine. Just move on to the next thing.
Shadow work.
Right? Get out your journal. Do your shadow work. It's important. You may
Tis the
need therapy.
season for shadow work anyway,
Right?
so.
Yeah, exactly. You may need therapy with your shadow work, and that's okay too. Um, and it's they all work together, and it's
Yeah.
amazing how so many people think, oh, you know what, I need to work on myself, so I'm going to start carrying this stone, or hey, I'm going to start doing this one thing or that thing, and they forget that we are complex people, and we're made up of many, many, many moving parts. And yes, you can fix one part, but there's all these other things that if you don't give some attention to or do something with, it doesn't matter if you fix this one thing. It's
Because you still have 99 other problems that are still
exactly.
happening. Sometimes though, that if we if someone comes into our office with 10 issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have all these different issues, they have a laundry list of things that they're wanting to work on. If we find the one biggest issue, usually they're tied together. So maybe we don't get all 10, but maybe we can knock out 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still going to be room for improvement and feeling better, you know?
Yeah, and that's something else. Even when we set those little goals and we are working on them and we achieve them, we're never really done working on ourselves. There's always something to tweak and fine tune and understand.
We're
Um,
always a work in progress.
and if no, for another, we're growing.
Yeah.
The things that we're doing, we're encountering new people, doing new things. 2020 has been a really, really new year for everybody. It's been a little bizarre
Surprise!
for surprise, a little weird for a lot of us, and we've had to roll with the punches a little bit, and it's really pushed a lot of people out of their boundaries, and that's
Yeah.
been good. Forcing people to stop take time away from, the go, go, go mentality that we have here, especially in the U.S. You're like, oh, kids to sports, kids to this, kids to that, kids to here and everywhere, and we're doing this and that and join this club and blah. Instead of, stopping to take a minute and focus on self. And mindfulness, to me, I guess, my personal interpretation, is really a form of self-care.
Yep,
And
I would agree with that.
And self-care is one of those things that we have a really hard time doing because we're not programmed to stop and take care of ourselves anymore. But we have to. You can't pour from an empty cup. So if you don't stop and take care of yourself, there's not much you can do for anybody else.
That's true. And I want to say, too, on the topic of self-care, self-care is not just about getting your hair done or your nails or taking a bath. Self-care is about having boundaries for yourself, having boundaries and then reparenting yourself. That's also inner child work. So reparenting yourself and giving yourself boundaries at the home and with other individuals. And self-love is sometimes is not going to seem very pretty, but that is ruthless compassion that we need to have for ourselves and also the other people in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes it is chocolate meditation.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. But sometimes it's telling Becky down the street to go fuck off, because you're tired of it.
Yeah, we call those people
protecting
Karens.
your energy and protecting yourself.
Yeah, and you do.
Our dating Becky's out there listening.
Yeah, right. Or
There's a Karen.
Yeah, this the Karens. Get the Karens down the street. It's real though. We have to stop and take care of ourselves, and sometimes that does mean, okay, you energy sucking vampire, I just don't have time for your drama today. I can't.
Yep.
And that's okay. It's okay to say no. And I think we need to remember that a little bit more. That it's okay to walk away and say, nope, I don't have time for that. So I guess that would be my next thought or question would be like, in those stressful situations, whether you're standing in line or dealing with Karen or Becky or whatever, how do you keep track of that mindfulness when we're stressed? Is it just that repetitiveness when we're not stressed, that muscle memory? Or can we program a mental cues like, okay, anxiety's coming up, I'm going to throw things and punch Becky or Karen. I know, right? Time to do something else, Maybe I don't need to stand in this line. Yes, I do need my driver's license, but it can wait until tomorrow. What do we do? Can we program ourselves to catch that trigger?
Paying attention to your physical signs. So, and what I mean by that is that I'll give a personal example. When I'm doing work and I've been doing it maybe for like 2 hours and I haven't given myself a break, I'll start noticing that I'm holding my breath and my shoulders will start crunching up to my ears. As soon as my hand touches my forehead, I do a face palm. That means I need to stop what I'm doing because my brain needs a brain break. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes for some people, it could be excessive yawning. Sometimes it's just all of a sudden getting tired. And these are signs that our brain is trying to tell us, be like, we're about to crank up the anxiety if you're not going to do something. We're trying to help you retreat from this situation. Mm-hmm. And so these physical triggers are going to be different for different individuals. Mm-hmm. But paying attention. So even if you have a situation where you like one day, just one situation, you start to develop like really, really crazy anxiety. And when you have some time, just go back and retrace your steps and pay attention to the small little triggers. Like, was I yawning a lot? Did I all of a sudden get tired? Mm-hmm. Was I kind of shifting around? And sometimes it's just as simple as paying attention to small little steps, things like that. And then if you do miss those, there's a couple different things that you can do. Of course, breathing. breathing is one of the best things that we can do when we're having an anxiety attack or panic attack. And the reason why is that normally when we are starting to experience anxiety, again, we hold our breath. When we hold our breath, that is a lack of oxygen to the brain. Then the brain's like, oh no, there's something wrong. Let's crank this up so then she's going to breathe. And then before we know it, we're having a full-blown panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
So if we remember to breathe, we're sending more oxygen to the brain. That's signaling to the brain that, hey, this person, they have it under control. We can crank the anxiety down and let's see how she handled it.